Ah, ah. So when I was in high school, right, I judged books by their cover. I mean, as a facetious young dipshit, why not? And honestly, at Barnes and Noble, why not? All right, there's so many beautiful different books on display there, especially Warhammer. All right, like you're not looking for the abstract, uninspiring books, but also you're not looking for the books that could look like they're on a video game cover because that's a no go, except for the Space Marine Battles novels, which I will get into. Every Space Marine Battles novel that I've read, besides like I think one of them, have been pretty great. They it's like a stratification of Warhammer, like of war into Warhammer, right? Pretty cool. I had a supreme revelation a decade in the making. See, I read The Bleeding Chalice from the Soul Drinkers, and by and large, it's a pretty straightforward kind of novel because um, they're just space marines and they just do space marine things. The only difference is they're renegades, and so they have to pretend they're not. But even the imperial forces are just like so elated to have them around that they kind of bat a blind eye to their terrible mutinous nature, and I did too. I batted a blind eye. All right, Sarpedian, the leader of the chapter, has 8 legs, and they're not human legs. They are arachnid legs. He is a mutant. We're not talking about just a tentacle mutant. We're talking about half, no, more than half of the Space Marine's mass being transformed into chaotic abomination. And I was willing to cast this off at the time. They live in a space hole. I was willing to cast this off at the time. Their greatest champion doesn't even wear power armor because his own skin is just about as tough as ceramite, but more flexible. I cast that off. I cast off all of these sins of the soul drinkers. I did it. I did it willingly because they were cool. I did it willingly because their adversary, Tektorok, is probably one of the most horrifying villains that I've ever come across. All right, I've talked about him before in other videos. He is like the most incredible necromancer. Not maybe he's chaotic. I don't know. He's not a good guy, but I don't think he's Nurglask either. It's more of a god of death than it is a god of rebirth. It's more of Naglash or whatever that stupid Tomb King's hero is than it is of Nurgle, by far and large. And so I was sympathetic. I was sympathetic to the Soul Drinkers. I thought they were just misunderstood. I'm here to tell you the Soul Drinkers are awful. They are the worst. Like yeah, they're the worst. They're the worst. I I don't. Yeah, I have words to describe it. I would tell you I don't have words to describe it, so I will. I've gone back and I've read the first book, and I'm gonna tell you right now, if you want to be in for a wild ride, just just shut me up and leave me. Just shut me up and leave me. Go buy the book. Totally worth it. At least for me, because I was treated to a decades of long revelation. So going back, honestly, the pacing on the first book here, it's pretty typical of Encounter. You start off and you're just like fascinated by these space marines. You're fascinated by them. Their main thing, okay, they do two things. All right, they do two things. They do them great. First of all, they are shock attack. When it comes to boarding actions against enemy troops and like whatever enemy ships, they are the shock attack element of the Imperial Fists. Dorn made them specifically to do that. He made that chapter to do that. I don't really know. I don't really know what the theme was in including in this book that Dorn did not want his legion separated. That he like threw a tantrum basically when the Emperor told him he had to separate his legion into chapters. I don't know what the significance of that in this book is, other than a chapter divided is no chapter at all. Maybe. United we stand, divided we fall. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know if that was the intention here. But it goes a bit in their love for Dorn. It goes a bit into their love for the Emperor. And so Sarpedian, and he's clearly the protagonist. He's clearly the main benefactor of everything that happens. Everything that happens. He gets gypped. He agrees to help out this imperial assault on this world, and the Mechanicus steals the only thing he wanted. He sacrificed only the lives of half a dozen battle brothers to secure it. So I guess that would have been anticlimactic if he would have just gotten the soul spear. But his pride is slighted. His pride is slighted, and so he does wage some sort of war with the Imperial fleet. It's not a war of proactivity, but rather a war of reactivity, which is something that I have not seen on the Space Marine side of things. And as you could imagine, things escalate quite preposterously. He kills an interrogator, which is pretty cool, but the main crux of the book that kind of just caught me flat-witted is so Warhammer has a bad job. I mean, like a really bad job of making you want to like certain characters. All right, there's a book called it's the book after Betrayer. No, whatever. It's a word bearer's world eater book that makes you like Argyle Tal. It makes you like Karn the Betrayer. All right, they're just like, we're gonna sell books. We want you to like these characters, buy their models, please. This is not that book at all. It incriminates them so bad, okay? When the chapter master of the Soul Drinkers goes to fight Sarpedian for basically going to war against the Imperium unto the point that the Inquisition gets involved, Sarpedian just mutates in the middle of it, and he thinks the Emperor did it for him. Sarpedian in his chapter, or his company, it becomes a chapter. They believe in the architect of fate. Stop listening to me. Stop listening to me for just a second. What does the architect of fate sound like to you? What precisely does that verbiage lead us to think about? What? How? Like what? Just tell me where your thoughts go with that one. And like, so even the chapter master before he died from Zarpedian being a fucking mutant, he's like, why would you listen to this mortal? He's talking about the archetype of fate, and even your chaplain's been the knee to him. And it's a long story. It's a long story. It's a fun story. But just like most of Ben Counter's novels, all right, they start off super strong, right? Like the opening of this entire saga is the Soul Drinkers are going in a drop pod. They're gonna hit the target, and they have with them an entire choir of servitors to sing for them as they go into battle. The servitors pretty much die as soon as they hit contact because the seal between the ship and the drop pod wasn't secure, so like the atmosphere just all leaked away. And that's the theme. Like the soul drinkers will get to armored checkpoints and be like, send in the serfs. And like they'll just bust in a troop of serfs with like tools and burning torches and all sorts of stuff because it's beneath the soul drinkers. Like they just live to send the humans the like not the battle. Fighting for their serfs explicitly is explicitly like forbidden. But they can do anything else, including hard labor jobs. And I mean, a space marine could easily do the labor of 20 men in 20 minutes. It would take them to do an hour, but yet they just deign to have like just all these like crews of mortals that serve them, just really to show off their opulence. And I wish Ben Counter would take some fucking like notes here because sorry. I wish Dan Abnett would take notes from Ben Counter because Dan Abnett will just like tack mortals on to the struggles of Astartes, and it's so annoying. It's so annoying having to look at the affairs of superhuman warriors through the eyes of just the layman or the laywoman. It's more often than not a laywoman. I've heard one of Dan Abnett's laywoman complain about how Space Marines couldn't reproduce sexually, and man, we have that in every other fucking genre. Can't we just have something that isn't just fucking sexualized Dan fucking Abnett? And you know what? Now that I'm on that fucking rant, fucking women, they're not sexy. You had like one sexy woman in Double Eagle, and that's just because you got the officers right. But you're like a twisted spined old man. You should not be writing about sensual affairs. Anyways, the way this book goes is pretty. It leads you on, all right. The first Soul Drinkers novel leads you on. It really does. It really does like set you up in this conspiracy. Like it feels like one of the many conspiracies I've been pulled away from. And so at the end of the book, it's revealed that the architect of fate is, spoiler alert, this is a spoiler for me 10 years in the making. The architect of fate is the demon prince of Zange. And here's why the subtlety works here. When Sarpedian turned into a Spider-Man, it sparked a chapter war. It sparked a chapter war, and it was the new initiates that went against Sarpedian, against the veterans. I'm not sure on the numbers here. I would like to stipulate it's around 50-50, but I couldn't say for sure. But it just goes, it's a subtle little nuance that goes to show that the new initiates were not tainted, but the old ones were. The old initiates were corrupted by chaos. And it's beautiful. Honestly, I've seldom had quite a delicious experience reading novels, especially in reverse order, by getting the context by which everything happens. Because in the Bleeding Chalice, they're basically space marines, and they never, ever, ever bring up Zange or the Architect of Fate. They just sweep it under the rug. And it goes to show the lengths in which a renegade chapter would actually try to preserve not its sanctity, but at least something from stopping it. But like by the end of the book, you get to read Sarpedian's thoughts, and he's like, "I thought being a spider, the Emperor wanted us to do. I thought Sergeant Tall having super strength and super resilience and super smell and super sight was a blessing from the Emperor. I thought this Space Hulk was a blessing from the Emperor. I thought killing a demon prince of Nurgle was an order from the Emperor." And it was all revealed just to be an elaborate scheme of Zange. And that's great. That's fantastic. Even as devout to the Soul Drinkers as I am, I'm telling you, I saw the future. I saw a realm of chaos herded in by none other than the Soul Drinkers themselves. It showed me so many possibilities. In fact, that's the best part of the first novel. This, you get a feel, a very authentic feel about what would have happened. You get to fantasize about chaotic soul drinkers. But at the end of the day, I'm not here to tell you that Sarpedian is crazy. They're all just crazy. They are ultimately instruments to benefit mankind. I'm reading the Bleeding Chalice. So if you want to go through this wild ride with me, go through it with me. But it's really just scary to think that an entire chapter of Space Marines could convince themselves that they were in the right when they betrayed the Imperium, when they betrayed an Inquisitor, and when they betrayed their own chapter. You want to know how the Renegades think, and you don't just want a clear like Chaos Imperium dichotomy. This is it. I'm reading the second book right now because it's a great one. It's a book about war. The Bleeding Chalice. Look, the reason why I'm so invested in all this right now is because even without the context of it, the Bleeding Chalice is just a great war book. It's just like, oh, this is what war's like. I just want to know what war's like in the Imperium, man. It's great. It's fantastic. The antagonist is terrible, and now that you've listened to me, you'll know that the protagonist is just as terrible.